Welcome everyone to South Huron Public Meeting on March 16th, 2026. We welcome the members of the public who are with us this evening in the gallery and those that are enjoying their time at home watching on Zoom. And we welcome our staff who are here this evening to provide us the best information and facts that we can make the best decisions on behalf of the residents of South Huron. All members of council are here this evening, so we'll call in the order anyways, this meeting. And roll call, please. Councillor Oak.
Here.
Councillor Neeb.
Here.
Councillor Dietrich.
Here.
Councillor Vaughn.
Here.
Councillor McLeod-Haggett.
Here.
Deputy Mayor.
Here.
Thank you. All members are present, and I'll ask everyone in the room to please ensure their cell phones are turned off or muted, with the exception of the firefighters. Disclosure of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof. Are there any disclosures at this time? Not seeing any. Move on to the purpose of the public meeting. I turn the meeting over to our clerk. Madam Clerk.
The purpose of this public meeting of the Council of the Corporation of the Municipality of South Huron is to consider and review proposed zoning bylaw amendments under Section 34 of the Planning Act. This meeting is also to allow interested members of the public the opportunity to ask questions or comments on the application. Council will not make a decision on the proposed amendments at this public meeting, but based on recommendations and information received at this public meeting, the proposed amendments will be presented for approval at a regular council meeting. The public registry for the application is located by the door and will be held by myself, the clerk. If any member of the public would like to be notified in writing of the decision, they are to provide their name and mailing address. Third parties do not have the right to appeal the decision. Only the municipality, property owners, the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, a specified person under the Planning Act or public body that has an interest in the matter may appeal the decision. Please refer to the County of Huron website for details about appeal rights.
Thank you, Mr. Clues. Whenever you're ready, please proceed.
Thank you, Your Worship and members of council. I am looking forward to bringing you back this update about the zoning bylaw update process. We have not spoken in a little while, though I did see a number of you at the open houses. So thank you for attending that. As a refresher, the fundamental purpose for this review is to implement the recently completed 5-year review update of the official plan, which came into effect last May, and to ensure compliance with provincial legislation and with provincial policy. There have been a number of general improvements, corrections, and other changes that have been caught through the review process. So we're looking forward to getting those cleaned up. As you'll remember, in December, we had the project initiation here at South Huron Council. January 29th and 30th were our open houses held downstairs in the Exeter Public Library, and we're now having our public meeting. Depending on how the public meeting goes, my hope would be to bring back a version of the bylaw for the first meeting in April, hopefully for adoption at that meeting, or for any further updates if directed by council. As far as consultation, the process has been advertised to meet the statutory requirements through the newspaper. I'd say that the municipal website and social media have been very successful. I highlighted some of the stats in the staff report. Whenever we had a social media post go out from the South Huron Facebook page, we did see a spike in activity on the municipal website for the project. So that was certainly working. We did also have an online mapping viewer and a project webpage available to the public. We saw quite good uptake of the online mapping viewer. On other projects in other municipalities, the feedback we've gotten, especially from farmers or other large landowners, is that the online mapping viewer can make it so that they don't feel the need to come to the open house or to the public meetings because they were able to have a detailed review of the changes or lack thereof on their property from home. We had about 25 members of the public at the open houses. After the changes were explained to them, no one chose to provide formal public comments. We were trying to foist those comment cards on a couple of people, but they ultimately decided they didn't feel the need to provide anything. And we had all sorts of different ways that folks had heard about the meeting. Word of mouth, through the social media, through the newspaper, or some people who were just at the library and wondered what we were up to with our maps over in the corner. And we've also had a number of discussions with internal staff, agencies, landowners, developers, and development industry partners. As I said, this is a general update, so there are a number of changes throughout the text and the mapping. Council has had the full version of the the mapping and the text updates. The text updates are all shown with track changes, and I know a number of you have gotten right down into the weeds on that, so I appreciate the attention to detail. Essentially, the report, the appendices at the back of the report give you a long list of all of the changes. The text of the report catches more of the highlights, and then in my presentation tonight, I'll do an even higher level overview. Some of the changes are directly to implement the official plan. Examples are adding a setback from water courses, including water bodies resulting from below water table aggregate extraction. That was one of the ideas that had come out in the official plan update, and it's now included in the zoning bylaw. There's a 2-unit limit maximum for commercial units in highway commercial zones. That was a policy that was specifically required in the official plan update. There's also, of course, the changes to the designations and the size of the settlement areas, including the designation of new land at the south and east of Exeter and at the south east of Grand Bend. And there are a number of provisions being removed from the bylaw that weren't enforceable anymore because of either mostly provincial legislative changes, but in the case of nutrient units, a new understanding of how we're able to use nutrient units in our zoning bylaw. There are also mapping corrections, some of which are actually mapping corrections that were carried over from the original Stephen Usborne or Exeter zoning bylaws when the 2018 bylaw was created. As far as the general improvements, essentially we were looking at the pain points that the building department or that planning staff have found in the bylaw over the years, trying to just clarify our existing definitions, adding provisions for some more recent or frequent features, for example, underground waste receptacles or generators. There were some minor modifications to the accessory building size. When the accessory building changes were implemented in the housing friendly update, they didn't take into account the fact that South Huron measures the height of a building to the peak of the roof, where many of the other municipalities pick the midpoint between the peak and the eave. And so we were matching that height difference by adding 1.5 meters. There are also modified parking requirements as a result of the municipal parking study that was done. And also just general updates regarding concerns that have come up over the years. Changes include a requirement for visitor parking for higher density developments, but a reduced overall parking requirement so that it nets out to still be that 1.5 parking spaces per unit. There would just be 0.25 visitor parking spaces required, and reducing some of the parking setbacks. 2 changes that should make small developments a little easier would be the removal of the requirement to paint or sign accessible parking spaces for our smallest residential developments. This actually came up on a site-specific application that council heard recently. And so the staff proposal is that essentially if it's below 10 units of residential development where site plan control would no longer apply in most cases, that we would not be looking for them to have to sign and post and paint those accessible parking spaces. They'd still make those larger spaces, so you'd still have a space that is accessible if someone had a mobility device or a wheelchair and needed it. But if no one in the building needs an accessible parking space, it could be used as one of the standard parking spots. Other changes include a requirement for the planting strip being changed to allow for privacy fences. We would be proposing a minor tweak to the draft that council saw, changing the threshold down to 4 units. The current draft has it at 5 units. The wind energy setback has been added to the bylaw. The purpose of this is to avoid new wind energy proposals that are too close to a settlement area and restrict the ability of the municipality to expand in the direction of those turbines. Also some quality of life for development provisions that I'd call them, temporary use provisions allowing for construction offices and sales offices, and the interim use of buildings that are being replaced. And change to allow for our village commercial C8 zones to have fully residential buildings. Currently, they do require one commercial unit at the front, taking up a certain portion of the main floor, which has been difficult for some of the small commercial building property owners. So that should help fill those spaces. In our agriculture and natural environment zones, we're proposing updates to match the updated official plan mapping. That's the largest set of official plan mapping changes. These are often small tweaks, but there are often many of them to match the existing conditions on the ground from the updated aerial photography compared to when the official plan mapping was originally done. There were also a number of inoperable special zones that spoke to nutrient unit maximums from past applications in the previous zoning bylaws. So those have been removed. Where there were still other provisions that made sense and that were operable, we left those in. We just took out nutrient unit limits. So for example, it might have an AG1 special zone that said that a farm on this property could only have a maximum of 80 nutrient units. We now know that we wouldn't be able to enforce that would be ultra virus. There are also a number of properties with extractive resources zoning, but where there were no active pit licenses and there's no active extraction or rehabilitation taking place as of the 2020 aerial photos. And so we were proposing to change those over to agricultural and natural environment zones. So this is an example. Again, council would have seen the southmost portion of this former pit in a recent site-specific application. Currently in the zoning bylaw, the entire former pit is still zoned ER1, and it would be changing over to AG1 for the majority of it, and natural environment for the existing natural areas. Along Exeter's Main Street, the maximum building height would be getting increased in the core commercial C4 and the mixed use C5 zones up to 6 stories from 4 stories to match the official plan permissions. There'd be some relaxed zone provisions in the mixed use zone to act as more of a transition between the C4 and the residential areas. And there are a few properties that in the official plan update, council directed that they be changed from core commercial over to mixed use commercial, and we're changing the zoning accordingly. There are a number of future development areas outside of the smaller villages and hamlets in South Huron that are not designated as part of a settlement area. And so their zoning, future development zoning, has been removed and reverted back to agricultural. There is one area that I'll highlight in a later slide that we would be reversing that. There are also the new future development lands being zoned east of Exeter and new future development lands in the greater Grand Bend area. In South Exeter, this is an area that I wanted to highlight to everyone who came to the open house. I think that this is a great move by the municipality based on the sewer improvement project that's taking place. We're proposing a residential greenfield special provision with a holding provision on it for the land south of Exeter. This would set a higher minimum density, but allow for medium and high density land uses as of right, so that a rezoning wouldn't be required for a new plan of subdivision on those large properties at the south end. There would still need to be planning applications, including lifting of the holding symbol and a plan of subdivision. And the site-specific special zone lays out what the requirements would be to lift that holding symbol. So we're hoping that this really helps make it simpler for a developer who's interested in building at the south end to know what the municipal expectations are before they even reach out to the municipality. There is a change within the settlement area that was being proposed to switch from agricultural small holding special provisions, AG 4-9, over to future development. Council will have seen a letter that came in after we provided the draft and the staff report, and the property owner is asking that that change be reversed. I would be open to reversing that change. The AG 4-9 special zone allows for essentially a 4 nutrient unit hobby farm use in addition to a residence. As an interim use before those lands develop, it doesn't offend the official plan. And the property owner has said that they have no intention of selling the property for development in the near term. Another change is behind Country Corners on London Road. The rear of the property was zoned light industrial, M1, and we're proposing to change that over to high density residential with a holding symbol on it to get that property ready for high density development when they're ready. And so these are the areas with some changes. Moving from west to east, the blue area was previously zoned AG 4-9. The red line that splits it is the settlement area boundary. The south portion in the draft that council has is rezoned to AG1. The north portion is rezoned to D. That north portion is where the property owner would prefer to have that remain AG 4-9. Moving over to the east, the first orange property is zoned in the draft as RG 1-2-H. That's that Greenfield residential zoning. Similarly, over on the east side, there's another orange set of properties. That's all zoned RG 1-2-H. And then the back of Country Corners is this purple highlighted property. The red area is currently zoned future development in the municipal zoning bylaw, but isn't in the settlement area. And so I had proposed to remove that future development zoning to match with the settlement area boundary. At the recommendation of staff, that change would be getting reversed in the final draft of the bylaw unless we get different direction from council. The idea being that while it's beyond the need currently for South Huron for growth projections, that is a direction that the municipality would likely like to grow in. And so the future development zoning makes that more clear from the staff perspective. Keep flying along. We've received a number of comments from Dawn DeJong and Caroline Baker. We received an additional letter today, and I understand that Dawn is online and potentially Caroline to speak to council. So I won't speak about this at length. There were a few provisions that we concurred as staff that they were sensible changes or issues that were in an earlier draft of the bylaw, and so we've made those changes. There were a few changes that they had asked for that either we weren't comfortable with or that certainly we weren't comfortable on proposing as staff, and that we would be looking for council direction on. An example of that is the changes for the high density residential special zone that applies to the large block at the front, I'll call it, of the Solhaven subdivision, where they're hoping to allow for other uses beyond the townhouses and stacked townhouses that were originally proposed. They've provided a concept for a retirement home and a community center for residents of the neighborhood. Again, I won't go through these in detail. The staff report has more detail about all of these changes. I will highlight that one of these, we have received comments today from a member of the public, 70881 Blue Water Highway. This is a highway commercial zoned property north of Grand Bend. It's within a floodplain. There are a number of constraints that would require planning related studies before the property can be developed. The property owner has reached out. They said their first and foremost concern was having a holding symbol on the property without it being clear what they had to do to lift it. They said that very clearly their preference would be that there'd be no holding symbol on the property. And if there is going to be a holding symbol on the property, then they'd want it very clearly laid out exactly what needs to happen before they lift it. From my perspective, now that they've reached out and we've started this dialogue with them about exactly what would have to happen on their property before it can develop, I think that we could remove that holding symbol. Take this as an education opportunity for this property owner so that they know what to keep in mind if they're ever proposing a development there. And so as far as next steps, tonight is the public meeting. So I'd encourage council to hear all the input from the members of the public. I have a team member from the county who's joining us online to take notes also. So if you don't see me frantically scribbling, it's because she's frantically scribbling so that I can be more ready to answer questions. And then once we've received public comments, if council has direction that you want to provide to staff, I would welcome any comments that you have or any concerns that you have about the current draft. And then we'd be looking to bring you back the final bylaw for your next meeting, unless extensive comments are received tonight that take more time to get through. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Victor. Well done. And I'm just going to turn to Madam Clerk for 4.2. There's some comments there.
So just to provide clarification, so written comments received, there are comments that were received prior to the publishing of the agenda, which were included in the agenda package. And then there were several comments received from members of the public following the publishing of the agenda on Thursday. So those comments have been uploaded as an additional document to the website for tonight's meeting, as well as circulated to council, and council has copies of those pieces of correspondence on their desk.
Okay, thank you. Normally we go to the council for comments, but we have the public here, and in the interest of time, I'd like to ask them if they have any comments they'd like to make. So are there any members of the public who'd like to come forward now? Mr. Shapton, did you have a comment? Yeah, come on down. And just state your name and address, Bevan, when you're ready.
Bevan Shapton, 539 Mary Street, Exeter.
Stay on.
So we request that the zoning remain at AG 4-9 for our property at 539 Mary Street. This requires that the proposed change to D, future development, be reversed. The flexibility of retaining use for agricultural small holding is desired at the present time and future market value consideration. Thank you, Bevan and Joan Shapton.
Okay, thank you. Any comments from anyone on that? Okay, thank you very much. And I believe Mr. De Jong is online. Is that correct? Is there anyone else in the gallery that'd like to speak? No, I see Mr. O'Rourke here. No, very well. Thanks. Go ahead. Don, whenever you're ready.
Thank you. Good afternoon, members of council. Appreciate you taking the time to hear our statement. A few things to note here. Mike and Victor were good enough to meet with us on several discussions and very helpful in understanding what Victor has shared today. But we have put a letter forward to staff on the housekeeping bylaw, and we recognize that to be fair in this, we need to present it to council to make sure that staff was with support of council in the idea of looking forward to changes on our land. But overall, we are supportive of the changes in the draft housekeeping bylaw, and it will promote efficient development and expedite the process. The one thing I'll add that we don't have written in text, and I said it to staff the other day, is I really believe and hope that delegated authority is coming in this vision. And I don't know what is the authorization for delegated authority, but that is something that we'd love to see and would support strongly. So look forward to that too. I guess we start with this rear yard definition here. And what we have is an example here to put on screen where the zoning bylaw talks about the top of this lot being the back of the lot. And really, if we had the choice, we would suggest that the east side of the lot, closer to the N, be the one used. And there's a slide further down, whoever's kind enough to be with the vision. Thank you, that'll work. Where the yellow line, we would suggest, is the rear of the lot. But because of the definition of the longest line being used in the zoning for rear yard definition, it kind of takes into account the what could be a side yard if the envelope that you see, the square box that has around 72 right now, would be turned more clockwise to be with the lot line to the bottom of the image right now. If anyone questions that, I'll clarify. But the basis of it is it gives much more versatility on the lot, and it creates more choice for placement. And that's, I think, where we're trying to be careful, because there's some beautiful lots we have in Solhaven, but the definition did impact a couple. And this is one that we just use for discussion with council. I know Mike and Victor were recognizing that. We do have a couple of examples of verbiage that could be helpful, but again, we come to council, so it's clearly on the table here. If you could be so kind then to forward to a slide that will show the agricultural zone. So the other thing that we've experienced in other jurisdictions, please, council, is that we have a provision where if it's development land, it doesn't preclude, or I guess I should say here, it also allows for agricultural use in the interim. So we've taken away the commercial vision on this as much, and we've been with a temporary use, as council may remember, for agricultural, and that's where this map comes from. But we ask, and it's reasonable, I feel, to allow agricultural use when you have development vision. There's no point in sterilizing land, and especially with the goals of the council and South Huron and the county to have more land be available for interim use would be, I think, a good choice. So we just ask that that be put into the bylaw instead of having to do a temporary renewal of a bylaw, please. The other little comment I'd say is, some of the coverages we have here are being defined, like Victor said earlier, you're with different jurisdictions having different aspects with even height of building. And yes, South Huron goes to top of peak compared to midpoint of roof. That's not in our discussion at the moment, as long as it's recognized in other ways. But when we have decks and porches and a few things put into the coverages, sometimes that's not always the case in some zones. So I just ask, to say a statement on that out loud for council's consideration, please. And I know we are with a couple of things answered right now for need on the townhouse block in Solhaven with the minor variance to the, I think, OBC definition. If I was there with Mike personally, I'd make sure I got that right. But I think there is a definition that's come recently that gives us a little bit of allowance to squeak by on a minor change there. So thank you. Moving from that, I would ask if we go to Caroline Baker's letter that is in the slide group or the image group. And that's on block 5. So you see, and Caroline is not with us tonight, although we'd love if she was, but she is not available. So you're with my attempt at speaking as well as she could. So with that, on the letter that she put out February 9th, I don't know if that's seen, we really are excited to be with some vision for our block 5, which is the land fronting the highway in front of our development. And it's one that has a parent bylaw that gives much more ability than it seems what we asked for there. And I think that's another learning that I have in Huron County generally, is sometimes it's very specific. And if we didn't ask for a couple of things, we should have. So we're not used to that as much. Sometimes a parent bylaw is broader and it's engaged in the whole zone. So the retirement easy living comes into play. Right now, we are able to do some 4-story units in there, and we would look to have that be with a retirement supportive living type concept. There's really been some great response to some of this discussion in the community, and we've sat in discussion groups on it, and we look to have that come into play on this parcel. And I think the R3-15 is very, directed only to this block, and the R3 parent and the OP allows for some retirement easy living factors more. but we didn't ask for it. So we need some more housing options for the seniors community. And that's a strong emphasis in the official plan, I think. And what I'm trying to say there is the new provincial housing plan as well, is to have a need or a recognition of retirement living a bit more is important for where we're going. So we say that out loud, and we are looking to have that. It does align with the PPS. There's what we are with on the next page, the PPS policy and South Huron's official plan itself. So it would, be a very important factor for seniors. We bring out a very quick site plan imagery to show you tonight. And the basis of this imagery is just to give you a little bit of idea of some thoughts we're with. Some of the units could be allowed now, but the buildings with the retirement in them need to be tweaked a bit more. And then at the very bottom of the image here to the left side, if that cursor could be so kind to move to the left side. Yes, that is exactly where we're talking for that building there. We've had some really interesting discussion from potential buyers and buyers themselves that want to be in the community. And what we heard is, where's your recreational center for the development? And when we add that thinking to the idea of the support building and easy living building to the top, it can be a dual complement. So it needs to not be an accessory use now of block 5 only, which is the block we're seeing. It needs to be labeled specifically for wider use, because we really could enhance the community and have it as a really great development amenity to have that building be usable by all members of the development. And so I say that as that's a recent one that I did not have as much discussion with staff on until today. Thank you, Mike. And with that, we need to be careful about making sure that we're thinking about this. Now, I'm not going to suggest that the changes you're going to do tonight or consider from us tonight would be only what would be required on site. We still, have to be tweaking site plan and being with several elements here to be with, but we need the right to be furthering this in the community. And I'm a little bit unclear as to why we didn't ask for it at the beginning, because it was a discussed item early, but yet it didn't get into the zoning bylaw. And we just asked for it now. And that would be very helpful. So the wider scope of recreational, again, on that south building is very good for our development, and quite excited to be with that, as it gives a lot of possibility. I'll answer any questions if it's appropriate now, or we'll stop there if that's enough. Thank you.
Thanks, Don. Victor, do you have any comments in regards to Mr. De Jong?
Yes, thank you. And through you, I think so. Just to kind of recap and run through the changes. So the changes that aren't currently reflected in the draft in front of council that we'd be looking for specific direction from council if you want us to make are a request that unroofed decks be exempted from lot coverage, or at least those decks that are not waterproof. That's not in the draft because of potential staff concerns about the potential for stormwater impacts with these very large decks that you do see sometimes. And because it would come down to the specific construction approach used for the deck as to whether water can freely flow through it, or whether it acts essentially as a building. The change regarding rear lot line definitions, there have been a number of potential tweaks to the definition reviewed at length by Mike and I. You could account for what's being requested by just changing the rear lot line definition to be the furthest lot line, not the longest lot line across from the front lot line. That's essentially what it comes down to. And maybe I will share my screen quickly for council here, because I do have an image that might be helpful. So this gives kind of an idea of the issue that has come up in the Solhaven development. There are more irregular lots than we would normally see in a plan of subdivision, I think it's fair to say. And so Dawn had shared screen for the blue lot over on the east side. But these purple and green lots, the yellow lots and the orange lot were all examples that we looked at. Using the blue lot, part of the concern from staff about just kind of slipping the change in is that if you do flip that rear lot line, it means that there's only a 1.2 meter setback off of that north lot line, and the neighbor would have their rear yard abutting to you. So you could have a full building wall along that neighbor's side of their rear yard because it's that pie-shaped corner lot, and you'd be flipping and using the further away lot line rather than the longest lot line to the north. So there were some potential impacts on the public that we wanted to make sure that council was aware of if you wanted to direct us to make the change. As far as the changes to the R3-15 special zone, I have no high level concerns about the idea of a retirement home use on the property or a community center use on the property. I think the fundamental reason why we did not incorporate the changes into the draft is this would be a number of individual modifications to the special zone on the property, which isn't a very old special zone. This has fairly recently gone through the public process, had a great deal of community input. And so again, as staff, we didn't want to just make these changes and say, here's a draft, we've made all of these edits to the bylaw. But happy to work with the Solhaven team if council wishes us to do that. I believe that is the, the last one was regarding the interim use of future development lands for agriculture. This issue only comes up where there isn't an existing agricultural use on the property. So for any of the future development lands, say on the east side of Exeter, those are currently crop lands. The future development zone says you can continue to crop those lands. The issue that came up for the Solhaven subdivision, and that would potentially come up on some other urban properties, is where it wasn't used for an agricultural use and it's zoned future development. So if council wanted us to allow for agriculture use as an interim use on all future development lands, regardless of what the prior use was, it would be a relatively straightforward change to the bylaw. The concern from staff perspective was you could suddenly have a property that's never been cropped, or certainly not in recent memory been cropped, where you have people going out and creating dust, creating odor within a settlement area. So those were some of the staff thoughts. We wanted to make sure that council was aware of all of these requests and that you could direct us to make all of them, any number of them as you wish. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other members of the public like to speak to this at this time in the gallery? Not seeing, we have anybody else on Zoom? Mr. O'Rourke, yeah, come on down. I figured you'd want to come in and say something, which is great. Always appreciate your time. That's okay. You just need to just sign in when you get done there. But go ahead and state your name for the record and away we go.
Pat O'Rourke. I'm a realtor in the municipality. I'm sure you're aware of that. We just noticed when we were sitting there that Mr. Shapton has requested his parcel to be removed out of future development and into agriculture. I'm representing Mr. McBride. He owns a parcel of land immediately to the south of that parcel of Shapton's, and it is agriculture. We'd like that to be put into future development.
Comments from Victor, if you have anything?
Yes, thank you. And through you, we had a discussion with the McBrides about that property. Let me just pull up an air photo here. So this would be the south portion, south of the red line. I wish I had used two colors on this now, in the blue area there. So these are the lands west of the tracks that are currently owned by McBride. The lands east of the tracks are part of the settlement area, have been put into this higher density residential greenfield special zone. In my understanding, during conversations with potential developers, the lands east of the tracks are being seen as more desirable, which makes sense. They're within the settlement area. They're essentially ready for development once the development studies are done. The lands west of the tracks, which are currently AG 4-9 and would be AG 1 after the update, are not seen as desirable to potential development buyers. The challenge with rezoning it to future development is that this is outside of the settlement area. It's not included in the official plan. What I had indicated to the McBrides as an option would be for a potential developer to buy both portions of land, proceed essentially with a phase one or with several phases east of the tracks. And then in the future, when you can justify the addition of more land to the Exeter settlement area, that they would ask to add those lands through an official plan amendment and a rezoning. The challenge right now for me as a planner, if we were to do an official plan amendment and a rezoning to bring those lands in, is that we didn't have such a surplus of need in residential land need when we just did this review, that I think we could come up with the acreage to say that those lands are truly needed within the next 25 years. But I certainly understand where McBride is coming from when you have two properties and he accesses the lands west of the tracks via the lands east of the tracks.
Okay, thank you. Pat, do you have anything further?
It's just that, you know, these parcels of land are on the market now for sale, and if we're looking to market it as a you know, development, both east and west of the tracks, in my mind, should be included in the urban designation, and that back portion should be future development.
Okay,
And this is the time to do these things instead of 5 years down the road or 10 years down the road going through the process again.
okay, thank you. Victor, you have any follow-up response to that at all?
I guess the only thing I just want to make sure is clear for council is that the official plan isn't currently open. So if council provided direction saying you wanted those lands zoned future development, they still wouldn't be designated as part of the settlement area or designated for residential development. There would still have to be an official plan amendment, and you'd still hit kind of that planning test of, is there a justification for these lands or not?
Okay, thank you. Councillor Oak, you had something?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Just on that, so if the top blue parcel goes back to agriculture, you know, that's probably a third of the other land sort of thing. So it's not as big a piece for development in that case, but it could be called development and not be in the settlement area at this point in time. That's correct, is what you're saying too, Victor?
For conformity with the official plan, I'd suggest that it should be designated as part of a settlement area if it's zoned future development. But if council wanted to provide direction to rezone that property, we could update the mapping accordingly.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? Councillor Vaughn?
Yeah, just wondering, a lot of ifs in this question. If we were to zone the property we're speaking of right now as future development, does that create any situations for the agricultural land to the north of it in terms of, are we putting some kind of a restriction on that property because we've just made one a future development property right next to it?
Through you, and great question. I am going to see if I can doodle on this quickly just so that we have a letter there. So if you can see the A and the B, then I can just refer to them as properties A and B, and I don't get everyone twisted up too much. So the property A, the property owner has asked, instead of future development, for it to remain AG 4-9. That agricultural small holding zone doesn't allow for, broad agricultural uses. They're quite limited in what they can do. So it would still be part of a settlement area. It would allow for that hobby farm use. As far as potential impacts on a hobby farm use on that property, if property B is zoned future development, I think that they'd be minimal, if any. They're already within the settlement area. So MDS calculations would be to lot lines would be the main issue that you'd be looking at. As far as potential MDS impacts on other lands surrounding, I would have to check. I'm not sure if it's not designated as part of the settlement area, if the future development lands would apply MDS setbacks. And so I'd have to double check that.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Oak.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a question, lot or property B there in this case. So it's for sale today with the other parcel. So if the orange parcel sells, is parcel B landlocked then without, if they don't go together? How do they get to parcel B, without, I guess
Well,
that's
I-
just a question.
I think that is really a question for a lawyer, but in my understanding, it's landlocked now because the railroad track separates those parcels. Mr. McBride crosses the railroad track and has been for many years to access that back parcel. So that'd have to be something that'd have to be addressed in future as far as developing that portion. There is my understanding that the sewage capacity is large enough to accommodate that back parcel. And that's another reason why we think it should be brought in as future development.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments, questions? Thanks, Pat. You can turn your microphone off when you're done there. Thank you. Okay, is there any other members of the public that's present like to speak to this, or anyone on Zoom that we're aware of, Madam Clerk?
There's no other members who are online.
Okay, thank you. And we'll circle back to Mr. De Jong's comments earlier. Any comments from members of council in regards to that now? Councilor Oak?
I guess I'm just want to go back to, I guess, do we need to make a recommendation for the property A there if you're looking for direction from staff, or from council on that property? Or is this something that you can move it back?
Through the chair, I believe property A, we could go ahead and move it back unless I hear otherwise from council tonight. For the other, like the Solhaven proposals, I'd appreciate if we could, get some direction from council on those.
Okay, thank you. Members of council, any comments? Solhaven? Councilor Oak?
Yeah, there's some good ideas here, I guess, are worth exploring further. The residential high density, it sounds like staff would be okay if we allowed a retirement designation on that R315. And so in light of that, I wouldn't have a problem in council recommending that.
Yeah, Victor, go ahead.
Yes, I think we'd be happy to work with the Solhaven team and with Caroline Baker particularly on what changes they need to make to that zoning to allow for the retirement home use. And the rec center, I think if we're changing it, we may as well change for both. The holding symbol would remain, and so we might also tweak some of the language around that holding provision just to make sure that things like MTO consultation and that aren't missed. And can be addressed later on down the road, but the fundamental use be allowed.
Okay, thank you. Council Oak, did you have a motion?
I'd move that if that's
Okay, well, we'll ask for
something that Alex could draft up.
whenever you're ready, Madam Clerk, take your time. Vic, do you have a comment as our clerk prepares this?
Yes, just while Alex is preparing that, the chief building official and I just had an aside, and we were wondering if council would want us to, while we're doing that change, also look at a special zone on the future development lands on the Solhaven property. And then we could address that interim agricultural use question for their lands, rather than kind of broadly addressing it across the whole municipality, where there might be some unintended consequences. I don't think we need a second motion or anything about that. But if I'm seeing some nodding heads, so I will draft things accordingly when we work with them.
Great, thank you.
So this is a draft, but that staff work with the owner regarding proposed zoning amendments for phase one to the Soul Haven subdivision lands to modify residential high density special provisions, special zone and possible recreation.
That's block 5.
Block 5?
Perfect. I was going to say that's plenty to get me where I need to go, but block 5 helps clarify it even further. Perfect.
So that staff work with the owner regarding proposed zoning amendments to phase one of Soul Haven subdivision to modify residential high density special provisions, which was R3-15, special zone with possible recreation for block 5.
So move, Councillor Oak.
So moved.
Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Neeb. Any discussion on that? Not seeing, call the question, all in favor, and that carries a 7. Thank you. Are there any other resolutions that wish to be brought forward at this time? Councillor Oak, go ahead.
I guess just wondering about the rear lot definition, I guess, because staff has been working on some wordsmithing there. I don't know. Is that something that we should explore?
Yes, if I think as long as council's aware that if we make the change, there might be some more kind of neighbor conflict that happens. We'd be happy to bring back the next draft with the change, with a changed rear lot line definition. Yeah, it would. So the chief building official is just saying that another option we could talk with the Soul Haven team about would be doing it on a site-specific basis within their subdivision and just clarifying, changing the rear lot line definition within their development and within their existing special zones. So.
Councillor McLeod-Haggett.
Through you, Mayor Finch. So, sorry, this is a question, I guess, for Mr. De Jong. On the diagram that you gave us where you want to rotate the house, the property right next to it, has that property been sold yet?
Mr.
No,
DeJong, when you're
Thank you so much for the question. That is still in the Taylor's holding, and it has not been sold. If I may, I also recognize that for their area, there's a setback factor that would be for them because of the windmill at this time too, just to say that out loud.
Okay, thank you. Victor, you have something?
I think that might have been a different question than was asked. I believe the question is whether the lots within your plan of subdivision to the west or to the south have been sold.
Sorry, thank you so much. So the west or the south of that lot. If I may, then I'll just take a step back myself. I believe that the interference and the concern that you're raising, Victor, if I may, is that you're seeing that for the future the agricultural land to the north. Is that correct in my interpretation or not? Because that is what I saw as the interference. Because right now, the impact of what I'm doing in suggesting the easterly yellow lot to the rear or easterly rear lot would be matching the other lots all around it. It wouldn't have any more impact than normal. So it wouldn't be to our parcel that we'd be negatively impacting it. I thought it was to the neighbor's parcel of concern.
So you'll be able to work directly with the applicant then on this?
I certainly can. I think the question for Dawn was whether Dawn, if you can see the screen share, whether this
you.
property and this property have already been sold, abutting the blue lot, or whether they
No,
are.
they are not sold at this time, period. Yeah.
Yeah, and to clarify kind of Dawn's question for me there, through the chair, the concern is less about impact on the agricultural land. It's more in situations where we are changing these rear lot lines, that instead, so I'll call it the property west of the blue parcel, they would have a 6-meter setback, I believe, off of the northeast property line, their rear property line. The blue parcel would then have a 1.2-meter setback off of the abutting property line, but a 6-meter setback off of this farthest east property line. And so those were the sorts of situations when we were workshopping this as staff that we were running into, where, you know, we do allow ARUs in rear yards, we allow accessory buildings. Is it necessarily, you know, the end of the world? Probably not, but there are potential situations where you'd have overlook from one neighbor to another, and it could be exacerbated by switching it from being the longest lot line to the furthest lot line. So hopefully that helps clarify. I know we're getting deep into the definitions and kind of the esoteric part of the zoning bylaw.
Oh, thank you very much. We're 2 minutes before the 6 o'clock hour. So are there any other resolutions or any other comments from members of council? Councilor Oak.
Thank you, Mayor. So the letter tonight about the highway commercial property, removing the holding, I guess the question would be, there's enough checks and balances by just leaving it as C3 for what they could do with that property without having to put a hold on it?
Yes, I think we'd be comfortable as staff not having the holding, using this as a communication opportunity with them, making sure it's all documented for the property file, but not, and we wouldn't need a specific direction from council on reversing that change because it was noted in the report.
Okay, thank you. Is there nothing further from any other members of council? Councilor Vaughn, do you have something?
Yeah, I'm thinking the only other piece with Mr. De Jong was the exempting unroofed decks from lot coverage calculations. Did you need anything from council on that?
If council wants to direct it, we would need you to tell us to make the change. The feedback from the building department is that this would complicate permit review and enforcement, and potentially cause a number of headaches. So I think the strong preference of the building department would be to not make a change to that provision at this time.
Is it appropriate that I speak once more on that?
Yeah, go ahead, Don.
Thank you so much, members of council. Just the only thing I heard Victor say, if I may be so bold, is that a deck being a raised area, not flat on the ground, is maybe a definition that gets more complicated, but it would still not obstruct flow, is where we were, we would be open to anything that staff could see as helpful with that thinking. It would, need to be discussion more, but it's not a case where we'd look at having something block flow. As Victor said, we wouldn't choose that impact either. Thank you.
Victor?
Yes, thank you. And to quickly kind of sum up the nature of the concern, the issue is when a deck is built, even if the deck is originally built with, standard gapped decking, and water, when snow melts on it or when water flows through it, it flows through, hits the ground, is absorbed into the ground. There wouldn't necessarily be a building permit required or issued when that decking is changed. There are products where you can have contiguous decking where there's no ability for water to flow it, and there'd be no opportunity for staff to be involved there. Also, and so what you could end up with fairly easily is a situation where someone was at their maximum lot coverage or very close to it, built a big deck. Let's say they got a permit when they built their deck, but they built it in a way that allowed water to flow through it. Then a few years later, 10 years later, they replace that decking with something where the water doesn't flow through it. And the municipality gets a complaint a number of years later from a neighbor because of the runoff. That's the kind of trickle-on effect that I think is concerning for the building department, where we can totally understand there are lots of decks that wouldn't cause a stormwater issue or a major lot coverage issue. But it's, if you aren't treating them as contributing towards lot coverage upfront, then you end up in situations down the road where you could have these compounding impacts from a number of different properties and from changes that don't require permits.
Thank you. Any other comments, Councillor Oak?
I guess just one last question for me anyways, is the future development of the McBride land to the west of the tracks. I wondered if that would be something that staff would consider looking into future development with that property, working with the owner.
I like we've had a meeting with them. If council wants those lands zoned future development, if you could quickly provide direction to that effect. I like the challenge for me. I think I've explained the challenge from an official plan perspective, but certainly happy to edit the document and have that in the next version if council wants that.
Councillor?
Yeah, I guess in light of the grant that we got and to build out that area for future development, I think that I'd make the recommendation to include it in future development. It was part of the area that we talked about for the London Road trunk sewer. So
Yes. Okay. And Madam Clerk, whenever you're ready. Mr. Rolfe, go ahead.
Thank you through the chair. I'll just quick add to that I'm a little bit different than what Victor was saying on this one. This is very, very similar to that future development land that's south of Exeter right now. We do know that Exeter is eventually going to grow down that far. We will need settlement area expansions, but it does show that municipality is wanting to develop. So designating those lands as future development, yes, they will need an official plan amendment. Yes, they'll need a zoning bylaw amendment, but it does show that when those plans are designated as development, that the municipality does want to develop.
And that's certainly true when we meet with the ministries about different assets here too. So thank you for your comments. I'll just wait for Madam Clerk to prepare that and we'll get moving along.
That the McBride lands west of the railroad tracks on London Road South be zoned future development.
So moved, Councillor Oak.
so moved.
A seconder, please. Seconded by Councillor Vaughn seconds. Is there any discussion on that? Not seeing you. Call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Okay, that fails then. Okay. Okay, thank you. Any other comments at this point? We're going to go into the regular meeting here in a few minutes. Okay. Ms. Masuha-Carlson.
The South Huron Council now closes its public meeting at 6:05 PM.
Moved by Deputy Mayor, second by Councillor Neeb. Any discussion? Call the question. All in favor? And that carries with 7. Thank you. Okay.